You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Fast ship. Never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
What a piece of junk!
Covering Star Wars vehicles in less than 12 parsecs, this is Start Your Engines.
Don't get technical with me.
Here are your hosts, Paul Naylor and Mark Newbold.
You're listening to Start Your Engines. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me for this very special debut episode, well, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because people may not know who you are and what you do.
Hi folks, I'm Paul Naylor. I've been with Fantha Tracks since day one, and I've been helping to write reviews and various other contributions to the site. And I used to be a journalist.
Used to be a journalist. That's helpful knowing that. So our whole MO is to talk about the starships of Star Wars. We're going to do speeders, freighters, capital ships, anything and everything in between. We're going to kick off with arguably not only the most famous ship in Star Wars, probably the most famous ship in all of sci-fi, the Millennium Falcon. Every ship in Star Wars, we have a different kind of connection to it.
Yeah.
What's your connection to the Millennium Falcon? The first time you saw it, what was that relationship?
We're of a very similar age, so we saw Star Wars first time round on the big screen back in '78. It was more than a ship, it was a character.
Yeah.
That's how I always thought of the Millennium Falcon. It's got so much depth to it in terms of how it's portrayed on the screen that it feels like another character.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about it. Of course, it was all beat up, it didn't always work properly. It had its moments where you didn't think they were going to get away. My particular favourite time that I saw the Falcon would probably be when you walk into the hangar at Mos Eisley, and there it is. I would imagine it's like when you walk around and you see it there on Galaxy's Edge. The Millennium Falcon, X-Wings and TIE Fighters have always been the three key ships to me. And then when I got it for Christmas the one year, I was like, I played with that thing to death. Mum and Dad got their value for money out of that one, put it that way. But yeah, no, what was yours?
Same, very much the same. Saw it in '78 like you did, and yeah, you're right. I mean, I was a bit different. The first time I saw Star Wars, me and my dad turned up late. Obviously, I wasn't driving, I was only 6. So we turned up late, so we turned up at the Han and Greedo scene.
Right.
So then from there, you move on, and so I saw the Falcon before I saw a Star Destroyer, before I saw a TIE Fighter, any of that. It was quite unique in that sense, but yeah, totally a character. Star Trek has got the same thing with the Enterprise, hasn't it?
Yes.
She's not just a ship, she's a character. In the realms of Star Wars, there's not many Star Wars ships, because there's loads of TIE Fighters, but it's not got the identity that the Falcon has got. She is a character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, Solo layers a lot of that on by L3 becoming part of the system, and just so many other aspects. She's a quirky ship. She doesn't always work, but when she does, it's incredible. My Falcon, we're recording this in my collection room, so my Falcon's over there somewhere, my original Falcon, and I'm looking at Falcons in front of me. They're sort of dotted all around the room.
Yeah, they are.
It's a unique relationship, though, isn't it, with the ship?
It is, yeah. I mean, my Falcon is up in the loft, along with the AT-AT and God knows what else. But as a playset stroke ship, that was like the first big, bulky thing that you had.
Yeah.
Unless, like you and I, you were lucky enough to have the cardboard Death Star, the Palitoy Death Star, which was also a fantastic item to have for your figures.
Yeah.
But the Falcon was so playable. Everything on it was great. It wasn't exactly screen accurate, obviously.
No.
But you could pick out all the elements from that, and each and everything that you had that you were playing with your figures, you could relate back to the film.
Yeah.
The Millennium Falcon, to me, when we first got the trailer for The Force Awakens, and we saw that the Falcon was back, that was a goosebump moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely.
I think I'm right in saying that was the first thing in the trailer that we saw that was connection back to the old trilogy, wasn't it?
As a vehicle throughout the thread of the Star Wars movies, because, you do see the Falcon in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
You do see the Falcon, obviously, in the OT. You see it in Solo. Obviously, she's ever present in the sequel trilogy. So there's, as a character, as much as R2-D2, really, as the droid, you'd say R2, as the ship, you'd say the Falcon. There's definitely a connection all the way through. When you think of the Falcon, if I said to you straight off the bat, what moment do you think of first when you think of the Millennium Falcon? What would you say?
I would say the asteroid field in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Everything about that scene was perfect for me. The music fit absolutely beautifully to it. I loved it when they dropped a little bit of a reference to it in Solo.
Yes.
That was great.
Yes.
But that music and the way the Falcon the sort of gliding almost between the asteroids.
Yeah.
And then when it landed, obviously, in the space slug, thinking it was an asteroid.
Haven't we all done that?
Yeah, for me, that was the quintessential Millennium Falcon moment.
I wouldn't argue with that. I think if you think of the Falcon, you think of that escape from Hoth.
Yeah.
Just the impact of it, the way she dodges those 3 Star Destroyers. Solo as the pilot, the ultimate pilot. I mean, Lando was a great captain of the Falcon, no doubt about it, the adventures he had. But the ship matches the recklessness and the never tell me the odds vibe of Solo, doesn't it?
I'm Brian Herring, BB-8 puppeteer, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. That'll learn you.
There's been some other great moments. I mean, the chase on Jakku in Force Awakens is brilliant when Rey's piloting the ship. There's some great stuff. Chewie's piloting the ship in Last Jedi through Crate. That's amazing. You can't not look at Lando steering her through the Death Star superstructure in Jedi. But I've got to agree, I think with the music, with John Williams just underlining it, it's perfect.
The deleted scenes from Return of the Jedi, where you get to see, is it Kraken? Was it General Kraken?
Yeah.
And various members of the expanded rebel forces getting really involved in working in the Falcon, in the gun turrets and everything. That would have been so interesting to see. And I think the only reason they did that is because smaller kids would have thought it was like a bit of a detachment away from the core group.
Yeah.
But as adults, then it would have been quite nice to see that development of the use of the Falcon, I think.
It's funny with Jedi, there's lots of little sequences they film, like the Sandstorm scene, which had the Falcon in, and, you know, there's other bits with General Maybeam.
And Moff Gerard.
And like, there's quite a few different little bits that were filmed for Jedi that are in the novel, James Caan's novel, you know, when Vader force chokes the Emperor's guards and stuff. There's actually more of the Falcon taken out than you realise, isn't there, in Jedi? But the impact that she has, leading, along with Wedge, leading that mission to take out the main reactor was fantastic.
Yeah. And of course, as most people will know that are listening to this, the Falcon in Return of the Jedi, there wasn't actually a model, was there?
No, they didn't full scale one, no. And of course, I mean, they built the one in Wales, Pembrokeshire for Empire, the full size one, the wooden one built at the shipyard, which is crazy to think that they didn't use that again for Jedi. It's just a matte painting on Home 1, isn't it?
And that's all it was. When you see Han and Lando, that's the only time you actually see the exterior of it, I think.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
But you don't actually see it landed anywhere. Weird to think that it wasn't actually there as a physical thing, you know.
The thing about the Falcon is that because she's such an important special ship, you can almost give it too much reverence. I think Solo drew the line just right because you get to see her at the best. That whole sequence in the Moor is amazing. Yeah. Obviously, she starts off as this beautiful, sleek, hot rod ship that Lando's got, like a Casino in the Stars type ship, and then ends up the battered old knackered.
But that was what was great about Celebration at Chicago, because if you remember, you had the tunnel that linked the two versions of the interior.
True. Yeah.
So you had the very much yellow and very clean look of Lando's version. Yeah. There's even a bar area. Yeah. I've got photos of me having a drink with a Mandalorian girl. Hello. And then you walk through the tunnel and you're in the more familiar New Hope one. I think there's pictures of you and me sat there, isn't there? So that was clever how they did that. But yeah, that juxtaposition of saying Lando, because of the type of character he was, he had it like this. Han was a bit more rough and ready. And it was a bit like that episode of The Simpsons when Marge goes away for a break, leaves Homer with the kids, and she comes back for something, and she'd have been gone 10 minutes, the whole house was a wreck. Yeah. That's Han in the Falcon, basically.
Weapons specs.
She got two CEC AG 2G quad laser cannons.
Of course you have.
One on the top and one on the bottom. Now, if you think about those, they're enhanced, they're powerful, they pack a punch. Yeah. The sequence that really shows them to their best power, you would say it's either the escape from the Death Star in A New Hope with Luke and Han, or the escape from Jakku in Force Awakens with Finn and Rey. So both great sequences.
Yeah. Probably of the two, controversially, I prefer The Force Awakens. Probably because I've seen the other one so many times and it's lost its power. Yeah, I love the fact when the gun locks as well.
Yes.
And you have to get the Falcon up in the air, almost dropping back. Yeah. And then shooting from the gun because it's locked into one position. Yeah. That was just a nice little quirky moment. Yeah. Which The Force Awakens did well. It delivered. It delivered. Big time. In so many ways, yeah. But yeah, no, those guns, I always struggled with in my head when I was a kid. Is the person that's in the one at the bottom upside down? Because that's the way they portrayed it in the Palatoy stroke Kenner version, isn't it?
That's
you
right.
Put your figure in upside down. But is that one actually upside down? Because it doesn't look like it once they're in there.
No,
but,
I mean, you see Han go up and go down, don't you?
For a lot of people, that was a great scene in the film anyway, wasn't it? But yeah, because the special effects have moved on so much now, then it was probably better executed in Force Awakens.
Special effects technology in everything we're going to talk about on Start Your Engines kind of comes into it. Yeah. You know, you see, for example, the land speeder in the original version of Star Wars from '77 when they've sort of greased out the wheels.
Vaselined out the wheels.
Exactly. And then you see it in the special editions in '97 and they've been able to crop her out and lift her up and give her that shimmer and it looks so much nicer and cleaner and such. And so there's various vehicles and then you see speeders in Solo that look phenomenal, practical on set, physical stuff and then adding in all the other elements. The Falcon's like that as well, because when you see her in Force Awakens, you realise what a tough ship she is.
Yeah.
Whereas if you thought of the Falcon bouncing off a Star Destroyer in Empire, as a kid you'd think she'd just crumple like foil.
Yeah.
But she
game over.
She wouldn't, would she?
By the time you get to the Rise of Skywalker, the start of the film when it's doing all those
On the micro jumps, yeah.
And then it lands back on the on the Rebel base,
Yeah.
and there they are with the Falcon with fires coming all that. But you think, oh, surely that's done for. It's a tough old bird.
Totally a tough old bird. Between those forward mandibles, there's 2 Arakid ST-2 concussion missile tubes which carry 4 missiles in each magazine.
Or Nerf bullets if it's the toy.
Exactly. That'd be great to see an episode of a Star Wars film when a Nerf gun fires out the front of the Falcon.
But it sort of like limps out and just drops.
But you don't see that weapon used that often. You see it in Solo, but you definitely see it in Return of the Jedi when Lando shoots at the reactor.
Yeah, you know, I'd never even thought about that. Proton torpedo.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I've only ever thought the top and bottom cannons.
But it's Lando and Wedge doing that run. Wedge obviously takes out the smaller one and Lando takes out the bigger one, and together it takes out the reactor. But what a powerful weapon that doesn't get used that much. She's also got, and this is a great scene in Empire Strikes Back, a Blastech AX-108 ground buzzer blaster cannon.
Yes, which we've seen being used, particularly on Hoth when they were about to take off and they took out the mobile
tripod laser cannon.
Yeah,
great defence for them when they're trying to get up the ramp of the ship, isn't it?
Hull.
So at the front of the Falcon, between the mandibles, there's the notch, and on the version that we saw in Solo, which made the Falcon quite nice and sleek at the front.
Yeah.
Obviously, it gave it a different aesthetic as well. So when you see that version, it's from the Solo movie, so you're instantly there, aren't you? But that was installed by Lando as an escape pod. That was then ejected into the Maul, and that enabled them to escape. By the end of that film, we got the familiar look that we were all craving.
I mean, she had that beautiful entrance when they've met with Lando. They go back to the ship. She's chained up, aren't they? And L3 unlocks her and gets her out of there. Yeah. And there was that beautiful little bit of music that John Powell did that is reminiscent of that Docking Bay 94. But of course, in Docking Bay 94, we'd never seen it before. No. So there's no need for reverence because this is brand new. But in Solo, you've got to play into the fact that we're 40 years on and that...
It was very reverential, wasn't it?
Very
it was
reverential.
Sort of like that slow burn Star Wars music. I did enjoy the Falcon in Solo, particularly the interior.
That's another interesting point in that as a vehicle, you know, you see her in A New Hope onwards, and even when you get to the sequel trilogy, which takes place over no time really, it's a couple of years, isn't it? Not even that. But she's still the battered workhorse that can still do what she can do. Solo's no longer around. Chewie's kind of in charge of the ship. You kind of feel that Rey inherits it to a large degree by the end of the film, and I hope we get to see more of that in the future because it means we see more of the Falcon. Yeah. I wonder whether at some juncture someone's going to throw a few thousand credits at that ship and get a look in. Okay, not change it too much, just panel up a few bits, get the rewiring done, get a look in something like... Because Solo, clearly, you look at where Han lived when he was a scrum rat on Corellia. Yeah. Comfort and style was not essential at all, just scrabbling from day-to-day survival is what counts. And that feels like the ship that we know best from the original trilogy. Whereas Lando, he's more bothered about his cape collection. That's a custom piece.
I know.
You know, it's a totally different...
It's strange that Han didn't keep the cape closet, isn't it?
Especially considering he had some good times in there, didn't he?
He had some very good times in there.
She's got 5 landing gears. Now, this was interesting when I did my research. We all know this. She had 3 landing gears in A New Hope and 5 landing gears in Empire. They never quite managed to explain why. You learn that she lost 2 of them in Solo and she crashes in that Maul chase when she lands and throws up all the shards.
Right.
So I think from reading what I've read, I think the assumption would be that Solo, as the captain of Chewie, have managed to repair those 2 broken struts and restore her to where she was when it was Lando's ship.
I'm trying to think of when it landed on Bespin.
Yeah, she's got 5. She's got Duralloy alloy plates, which were salvaged from an Imperial cruiser, so it gives her capital ship hull armour. It goes back to what we said about when you see her in the sequel trilogy and she's bouncing off things, you're thinking, oh, God, she's going to get wrecked. She's way tougher. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the visual effects make a difference because now the Falcon is built as CG. Yeah. Back in the day, she was a physical model. To have capital ship armour on a ship that's only, 33 metres long, that's pretty hefty, isn't it?
It's not bad.
Engine specs.
She has a combination of sublight speed and manoeuvrability, which basically meant, with a mix of hyperdrive and heavy weapons and shielding, she had the thump of a capital ship. I mean, it's like one of those hot rods in Fast and Furious when they put like the engine that's too big in it. Yeah. She's totally overpowered. And you feel that, don't you? When you see her in the films, when you see her in the sequel trilogy, especially, I think, in the sequel trilogy, that engine's too big for that ship.
And I think probably the best sort of comparison to that in recent times is Mando's new ride, the N1. Yeah. Which has clearly got a huge engine in it. Yeah. The way that can just suddenly just pick up speed.
Because she's got the manoeuvrability and speed of a starfighter, she can take hits like a capital ship, but she sits not somewhere in between, but she's significantly bigger than the Starfighter. You think flying through the superstructure of the Death Star in Jedi probably shouldn't have attempted that. I mean, she loses the dish.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
She's got a Quade X power core, which basically means, and this is definitely a role-play related thing, power core was kind of important because that's the juice of the ship, and she had a Quade X, which was always known as one of the better ones.
Main computer.
There's 3 droid brains in the Falcon. The first was a V5T brain, which is a transport droid.
Okay.
The second was an ED4 droid, which was a slicer, which makes sense. And the third was L337. So bringing them all together, they were the Millennium Collective, basically.
Right, okay.
It was overlaid with the data architecture from an espionage droid, a protocol droid, and custom state-of-the-art coding. So basically, that is as unique a ship's brain as you can hope to get.
And then you add to that L3's navigational maps.
Yeah.
When L3 is integrated.
And sarcasm, because that's the beauty, isn't it? When 3PO's talking to the Falcon in Empire, I don't know where your ship learned to communicate. You know, and it's like, we know exactly where she learned to communicate.
Yeah. I'm one of the few people that thinks Solo is up there in probably the top 3, top 4 Star Wars films. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Okay, it perhaps did itself a little bit of a disservice by answering too many questions.
Yeah.
But I live for the day that we get either a TV spin-off or a sequel.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Model and class.
She was a YT-1300 stock light freighter of the YT-1300F variety. So there's loads of different builds, there's loads of different types of Corellian
That'd
freighters.
be the fastback.
The fastback, yeah, with little flames down the side.
Yeah.
So the basic shape, she was defined by 2 convex saucers welded together. So it's basically top and bottom saucers welded together, the mandibles at the front, the outrigger-style side-mounted cockpit with a transparent steel viewport. So that's the classic sort of outline of the Falcon with the radar dish that we all know. She didn't maintain much of her off-the-dock instrumentation, so she was modified and customised and tweaked and changed till basically she became very much her own ship.
Talking about the cockpit, obviously the early drawings, sketches of the Millennium Falcon, it was very much sort of an elongated tube, but did have that cockpit on the end. And that's the only bit really that stayed, isn't it?
Very much, yeah. If you look at, like you say, those Cantwell designs and the early Macquarie stuff, I mean, she's kind of a cross between, I think, Space 1999 came out, didn't it? So the Eagle Lander. Yeah. So you kind of had the mix of that. I think they sort of took her and tweaked her into the blockade runner, basically, didn't they?
The cockpit has been sort of there almost from day one.
Yeah.
The Outrider, very sort of similar sort of vibe to the Falcon. West End games, when you were playing things like that, I would imagine that it didn't matter what ship you came up with in your own mind, you'd probably got that cockpit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
Even the Ghost in Rebels,
very
a little
similar.
Bit, sort of that evokes that, doesn't it?
Bit spacier, but not much.
Yeah, but it evokes it, doesn't it?
Yeah. One thing that always makes me smile about the cockpit location is that here in the UK we drive on the left, but you sit on the right.
Yeah.
So you're near to the centre of the road, and the Falcon's cockpit is sat on the same on the right side, isn't it? Whereas you'd think an American design ship, they would have stuck it on the other side. So I often wonder who came up with that final decision, or whether it was just an aesthetic thing, because your eye does draw from left to right, doesn't it?
Because other than that, if you took off the cockpit and the mandibles, you're basically a hamburger, aren't you?
Yeah.
Which is what George Lucas always called it.
Exactly that. Yeah. Because Solo and Chewie would have jury-rigged so much stuff. In the Solo books, the Han Solo trilogy, they had fluidics, which was like a water-based system there to strip out and put her back. So she's been gutted and refitted, wired, and all sorts of stuff, left, right, and centre. Those guys must be constantly modifying the Falcon as they go. She breaks down a lot. She's not the most reliable ship. No. We see that in Empire, of course. That's the classic.
That's where the character comes through, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. She loses that military-grade dish. She gets replaced with the rectangular dish we see in The Force Awakens. Like you just said it, really. It totally adds to the character of the vessel, doesn't it?
Let's make no bones about it. The change of the radar dish was probably really so that people would buy another Falcon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was for the collectors. As well as serving that purpose, if you see it with a rectangular radar dish, then you know that it's from Return of the Jedi onwards.
That's right.
Yeah, there's always little pointers to make sure that you're referencing it in the right time zone.
Yeah.
You were talking about all the modifications.
Yeah.
The chess table. That wouldn't have come as standard, surely.
You'd think not. I don't know. I mean, Lando had the chest table, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
You know, and Chewie bashed the table and knocked a couple of them out like they lost the strut. Solo's so clever in retconning his little foibles that they've come along. Yeah, I'd love to know. I don't know if it was standard.
Yeah.
My head tells me not, but maybe, you know, long journeys.
I'd like to think it'd be a bit like one of those ones that you could buy as a kid where it was like 6-in-1, where you could take that off and you could put like a air hockey thing on top.
Engine specs.
The Falcon's Gyrodyne SRB 42 sublot engine is heavily modified throughout the addition of a slam overdrive. She feels like, you know, like in again, Fast and Furious, when they hit the little red button, the NOS comes in. That's what the Falcon feels like. As a result, the Falcon could fly at a maximum speed 1,200 kilometres an hour in atmosphere, so that is fast.
Right.
And 3,000 G in space. That equates to, in space, she can do, get ready, 6.13 quadrillion miles an hour. That's fast.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck to the windscreen when she's doing that.
That explains why that little bowl and the spoon were jumping up and down in the background when it took off from...
Is that why? Is that what it is?
No.
Is that why reptiles don't stick to the front?
Yeah.
The stock hyperdrive of the 1300 series, he replaced it with an ISU Sim SSP05. Very fast hyperdrive system. The regular system was the Class 1. The new Falcon hyperdrive was a Class 0.5, which basically means she's twice as fast as most Imperial ships.
Okay.
Certainly the warships. You know, Lando wasn't necessarily a smuggler. He was an entrepreneur, wasn't he? He was a gambler.
He was a businessman.
He was a businessman, and so he had his finger in a lot of pies, but you kind of think when Han and Chewie took over as captain and co-pilot, that smuggling became the prime thing for the Falcon.
Which is interesting, because like, as kids... they were the good guys.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you think about it, if they were smugglers, they weren't really that nice people, were they?
Well, in the Brian Daly book, that's a great point. In the Brian Daly books, he made the point of saying that Solo would transport anything as long as it wasn't sentient.
Yeah.
And we all know what spice is. You know, we've seen it in Book of Boba Fett. You know, there's no mistaking what it is. And, you know, you get the spice runners of Kijimi in Rise of Skywalker. So, you know, it's ever-present, isn't it?
It is.
The drug aspect is ever-present. Completely stolen from Dune.
Prior to falling out with Jabba, you know, if we'd have gone into Jabba's palace, he would have been one of the guys wandering around in there, chatting to Bib Fortuna.
What an interesting thought.
He would have been part of that gang, you know.
That's a great... I never considered that. The first time we see Solo was in the booth in Mos Eisley in the cantina. Could have just as easily been in one of the booths you see in Jabba's court.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
One of the things that the Falcon failed regularly was the engine coupling, which caused her to break down and misalign and things wouldn't work. You see that in Empire, of course, with 3POs trying to identify and help identify what the problem is. It's weird to think of things like this being character building for a starship, isn't it?
Yeah, it was forever breaking down.
Yeah.
As much as it had been modified, and I'm sure Han thought it was the absolute nuts, it wasn't as strong internally as it should have been. Maybe it had been done on the cheap.
Possibly, but I think as well, you know, she was like rock solid, never fails, always goes, never a problem. Where's the drama?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and there's that bit when he's being all cocky with Leia and like, I got this. That just completely adds to the character of the ship.
I had a Talbot Horizon very much like that.
She had a pair of beam lamps at the front, which you do see in Jedi,
the asteroid field as well.
And in the asteroid field, you see it in Crate, under the surface, in the caves under Crate. Yep. Illuminates the ship outside of the ship. We see it in Solo as well in the Maw, which are mounted on the tips of the mandibles. And this is fantastic because this is from the holiday special. In case of emergency landing or crashing in water, she had those flotation pontoons, which just keeps her floating up. She also had a static charge dissipator, which I think makes sense because if it didn't have that, then Chewie's hair would have been like a Pomeranian, wouldn't it?
Famous moments.
We know what we saw in Solo. We saw Lando as the captain. We saw Han take her away at the end of Solo in the Sabacc match.
Yeah.
We rejoin essentially, and hopefully we will get that Disney Plus series that fills in the gaps. But we rejoin in Docking Bay 94 in A New Hope, and we all know the story of the original trilogy. But the fascinating thing, once you get past Return of the Jedi, once that radar dish like you mentioned has been knocked off, at some point following the Battle of Jakku, which was really the end of the Galactic Civil War, Solo travels to Maz Kanata's castle on Taikadana. He wants to have a conversation with her. They're having a conversation, and a Nikto called Gannis Dakane, who gets mentioned in Force Awakens, he offers to co-pilot for Han whilst Chewie's back with his family. So Solo and Dakane do a small job which takes them to Christophsis, which is the first planet we see in the Clone Wars movie.
Right.
And that's where Dakane steals the Falcon. So Han has lost the Falcon, and as it gets explained...
It goes through about 3 or 4 different sets of people after that, doesn't it?
Exactly that. It was later stolen by the Irving boys. It ends up with Unkar Plutt on Jakku. It sits there until Force Awakens. minimal repair, minimal upkeep, because Oncar's always thinking, I'm going to repair this and sell it for a mint, and never does. It's like finding the Titanic, isn't it? It's like it's a legendary vessel that's sitting under a tarpaulin in the back end of nowhere, and then it gets found in The Force Awakens. Amazing that the ship even flew, isn't it?
It is. I mean, they must have some sort of energy core in there that exists for a long time. When Rey and Finn are running along trying to escape from the TIE fighters, and you see them going towards the quad jumper, which then gets blasted to pieces. We'll take that thing over there, and there's the Falcon with the tarpaulin sort of like draped all over it unceremoniously. Well, I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it. That's the moment when you're back in Star Wars. Once you're in that Falcon, you're back in Star Wars.
We all think of the Chewie we're home moment.
But that comes a little bit after, doesn't it?
But that comes after, because Rey and Finn have already took the Falcon off Jakku. They've landed on the Erevanna. You know, they're hiding because they know somebody's coming in. And there, all of a sudden, is Han and Chewie. I mean, what are the odds?
It was amazing, wasn't it?
Oh, just the best. That's the moment in The Force Awakens, arguably more than Chewie we're home, that says, we're back on familiar ground. This is the sequel to a film that came out in 1983.
Do I take it then that Han and Chewie were trying to track where the Falcon was, but they couldn't track it until it was actually moving?
Because Han says that he thought they'd scoured the Western Reaches, but my read of it was that why would we even look at Jakku? What's on Jakku? We talk about this on Making Tracks a lot, how it's a small galaxy. Really, you know, there's trillions of people in it, but only a small percentage ever leave their homeworld. So the amount of people who are out there mixing and trading and underworld and stuff comparatively is fractional, because most people live on their homeworlds like we live on Earth. The only difference is they know there's a galaxy of stuff going on, we don't. To me, that's the difference, you know. So most of us, if we lived in the Star Wars galaxy, would just live our lives like this, and we'd see stuff on the news about what's happening on Coruscant or what's happening on wherever, but we wouldn't have any tangible interaction with it until the war kicks off, of course. With the Falcon being on Jakku, it felt to me like it just didn't even occur. Why would it be all the way out there?
Hello, my name is Aidan Cook, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
The Millennium Falcon, she's the first ship of Star Wars, I would say. Most people, if you said, name a starship from Star Wars, people who are like casual fans, most would say exactly what you said. They go TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Millennium Falcon. And then beyond that, if you're a bit more into it, you'd know what, you know, a Star Destroyer is. You'd know the Death Star.
Possibly throw a land speeder in there.
Exactly. But generally, as the classics, you'd put the Falcon in that sort of top 3 tier, wouldn't you?
Absolutely,
So that's it for our debut episode of Start Your Engines. You'll be able to hear us on Fantha Tracks Radio every 6 weeks on a Friday, 7 o'clock UK time, and it's long overdue. We were talking about doing this show, 2 years ago?
2.5, maybe even 3 years.
And then the world just flips upside down. So finally, on the 1st of April, we released the first episode of Start Your Engines, and we will be back in 6 weeks' time. We cannot wait. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in, Fantha Tracks news show Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Bye.